Hey guys, and welcome back to the Amazing World segment of Some Magical Storytime, where it's now time to jump into the next story I'm going to be reading for the series, the 10th story I'm going to be reading for the series, Out of Sequence. Thomas White was an ordinary young man in his early 30s, who was happily married and had 2 kids, whom he loved to pieces. He was on his way to bed one night when he felt a strange sensation in his body. As he and his wife were settling down for the night, the sensation started to take effect. "Thomas, sweetie, can you hear me?" she panicked, as he went into a sort of fit, with no cause. Let's call Tom's wife Clara. She became increasingly more panicked as she called an ambulance to come and take him to the hospital. Their 2 children, Bob and Wendy, rushed in from their beds when they heard the panic to find Tom lying unconscious on the bed. In Tom's eyes, as he was unconscious, there was a blur, and then a flash, and he awoke to find his eyesight coming back into focus as he sat up to find himself lying not next to Clara in 2022, but in his childhood bedroom from when he was 5 years old. As he rubbed his eyes, he noticed his hands had suddenly got smaller, the size of a child's. "What's going on?" he asked himself, but in a high-pitched little squeak like his childhood voice. The door knocked and a young woman entered, kissed him good morning and opened his curtains. This young woman had sandy blonde hair and emerald green eyes, and was wearing a sequin dress. "Are you all right, baby?" she asked as she noticed the confused expression on his face. At that moment, a young man entered the room. He had dark brown hair, brown eyes, and wore round glasses, and was wearing an athletics kit. "Is everything okay, Angie, dear?" he asked. "I'm not sure, Tim. Tommy has woken up looking all confused this morning," replied Angie. Upon learning this young couple's names were Angie and Tim, and they called him Tommy, Tom realized with a jolt that the young couple standing in the doorway were his parents, and this was actually his old bedroom when he was 5. So this meant he was suddenly 5 years old instead of 32. He could have fallen asleep as a 32-year-old. How could he have fallen asleep as a 32-year-old, a married man with kids of his own, and suddenly wake up as a 5-year-old boy? His parents helped him get up and dressed, while he tried to explain that he went to bed at the age of 32 and woke up suddenly as a 5-year-old. "Oh no, darling, that's impossible. You couldn't have travelled back 27 years and jumped back to being a child. You're 5, and will be until your next birthday," Angie told him gently. "You have some imagination, son," said Tim. As they entered the kitchen for breakfast, Tom glanced at the wall calendar to discover it was now 1995 instead of 2022. He was shocked by this revelation and even more convinced of his backwards leap in time. But Angie and Tim, were getting fed up with his stories about it, telling him that's enough firmly each time he brought it up. After a couple of hours, they put him down for a nap, thinking it would calm him down. His protests were ignored, as he was lulled to sleep by Angie, singing him his favourite nursery rhyme, and he was out like a light. Seconds later came another flash in his eyes, and he woke screaming in a baby's cot. Now unable to speak, he'd gone to sleep as a 5-year-old, and this time he'd woken up as a baby. An even younger Angie entered and approached the cot. "It's all right, baby. Mummy's here," she crooned as she lifted him out of the cot and took him over to the changing table to change his nappy. "Almost done, sweetie," she said sweetly. She cleaned him up and dressed him before taking him downstairs, and he'd fallen asleep. He was awake again by the time they reached the lounge, when an even younger Tim took over from her and fed him a bottle of powdered milk. As he chugged the milk, he fell asleep again, and they thought he was cute. As he slept, he saw a third flash and woke up to find himself wearing a police uniform and driving a patrol car in hot pursuit of a stolen vehicle. He radioed the other units to order them to join the chase. He glanced down at his chest to discover he held the rank of chief and was now in charge of his department. He realized he'd gone asleep in his father's arms as a baby in 1990 and woken up as a 45-year-old police chief in 2035, as the date on his car's clock told him. He could hardly let it bother him now, as he was in hot pursuit of a stolen vehicle. This was the third time this had happened to him. He soon caught and arrested the car thief, with the help of his deputy, a young female officer named Ellie Jones. "Take the scumbag away and charge him," he ordered her, after thanking her. When he arrived home that evening, Clara ran into his arms and hugged him tightly with pride. As they sat down to dinner, they talked as a family, but he didn't bring the subject of his time-leaping adventures into conversation. Bob then mentioned the fact he loved it when he talked about that, as did Wendy, despite being 15 and 17 now. They didn't think he was mad, but believed him about it and thought they knew why he was living his life out of sequence. Even Clara thought there was some reason for it, but they didn't discuss it around anyone else. "What a family," he sighed, with an aura of thankfulness for their support. "But why does it only ever occur when you're sleeping?" she asked. "I wish I knew, honey, but I don't, I'm afraid," he replied. He started to feel drowsy and conked out at the table. After experiencing the flash a fourth time, he woke up to find himself back in bed with Clara 1 year into their engagement. That much was evident by the fact he looked in the mirror to find a young man of around 21 staring back at him, and a 19-year-old young woman answering to the name Clara Bandowitz standing behind him in the bathroom. He checked the date on his phone to learn it was the 8th of July 2016 instead of 2035. Like it had been mere seconds earlier. He now realized he was living his life completely out of sequence, but still had no idea why. They finished getting up and ready and went down to breakfast. The post came and he received a letter inviting him to join the Coles Grove Police Academy, and he was ecstatic to be going into police training. Clara was excited for him too, as this was what he wanted to do with his life. Would this ever end for him? Living his life completely out of sequence, with no known cause? As he was out for his evening walk, He started to feel the sensation a fifth time, and saw a flash without falling asleep. First, until he reached the other side of the road. He collapsed on the curb and regained consciousness in a hospital bed. He looked in a handheld mirror to find an elderly man with pure white hair staring back at him. He glanced up at the floating wall calendar to learn it was now the middle of October 2078. Oh, my word, he coughed weakly. He had fallen unconscious in 2016 and woken as an 88-year-old man on his deathbed. He looked beside to find his now 58-year-old son, Bob, who was now the commissioner of the Coles Grove Police. He'd taken time off work to be there with him. Wendy arrived from the university campus, where she was a professor in the science department, to be with him too. The machine flatlined, and he saw a sick flash and woke up alive and well and in full health. He was sitting in his office at the police station, examining his appearance. He now had silvery grey hair and crow's feet around his eyes. He wore a navy uniform and still held the rank of chief. It was now the summer of 2053. He was 63 and had received several awards over his long service to the force and to the public. He was summoned to a board meeting at the headquarters, where he was promoted to commissioner, and he graciously accepted. He was proud to have made it all the way to this point in his career. He also knew he'd be retiring in a few years, but took to his new job like a criminal takes to his crimes. When he told Clara, Bob, and Wendy, they were so proud they threw him a party to celebrate. It's like being 21 again, he said gratefully. And that was out of sequence. I hope you enjoyed it. There will be another one of these anthology type stories coming your way soon. But until then, the next episode of this will be in a different category. And until that episode occurs, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching and have a magical time.